Religion and morality. What, if any, is the connection between religion and morality? Welcome to this series of reflections on the fundamental issues concerning the human predicament and the need that every human being has to live a meaningful and dignified life. One of the traditional justifications for religion, or the reason why human beings must be religious, is that without religion, there will be no morality. In fact, as great a genius as Mahatma Gandhi believed that the most precious, valuable aspect of religion was its moral core, and the main use or usefulness of religion, therefore, was that it served to enhance the moral sensibilities of human beings. And by implication, therefore, if religion is allowed to decline, or if we discard religion altogether, then human beings are likely to become morally anarchic, and that could spell doom for humanity. But what exactly is the ground reality? Now, the good thing about discussing or reflecting on this very important topic is that we have plenty of historical evidence. We don't have to speculate. We have solid evidence. Evidence both of historical witness and of our day-to-day experience. This is something that's being played out and has been in the process of being played out for centuries, and therefore we can be on fairly solid grounds in discussing this topic. Now, in the interest of brevity and clarity, let's identify the fundamental values that are necessary to undergird the wholeness, the sanity of human existence. Everybody agrees universally is that truth is one such value. Truth is necessary for human beings to live together and to act in collaboration and cooperation with each other. Wherever there is untruth, wherever there is falsehood, there is division, distrust, and unity is immediately subverted. Likewise, everybody agrees that without the value of love, life itself becomes unbearable. Love is the light of life, and if there is no love, life will wither away. About this, there is absolutely no disagreement. No one in his senses would ever argue that love is a dispensable commodity. A third value that's universally acclaimed and deemed as fundamental to sane existence is justice. How can social life be fair, just, healthy and strong if not justice but injustice prevails? Injustice, like untruth, and injustice is directly connected to untruth. In order to practice injustice, one has to resort to untruth or falsehood. Like in the case of falsehood, injustice also undermines the unity and cohesion of a society. A fourth value that is universally acclaimed is compassion. Compassion arises out of a sense of universal kinship, the deep realization that in spite of differences on the surface, we all belong to the same stock. This in the religious context is intuited as having a common parent, as in the biblical narrative. Every human being is supposed to have originated or issued out of mythological parents, Adam and Eve. Therefore, they have a common origin. This idea of the common origin is the etiological myth that explains an irreducible reality about human beings, namely, that we feel one with our fellow human beings wherever they are. This is what's called sense of universal kinship. And in the Hindu context, or in the context of Hindu worldview, this is formulated as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, namely that we are one universal cosmic family and therefore we are brothers and sisters. This sense of universal brotherhood is pretty strong in Islam. So it is in Sikhism. I'm not a scholar on other religions. I'm not a scholar on any religion, including Christianity for that matter. But I have a working knowledge of some here and there. So there is no doubt or dispute at all that compassion, which issues out of a sense of universal brotherhood or kinship, is an important value. Now the question to ask therefore is, to what extent does religion as religion contribute to the inculcation of these universal values in human beings? Conversely, to what extent has religion in the past as well as in the present subverted or suppressed or corrupted or crippled these values in human action, human nature, human perception, so on and so forth? Now, anyone who has examined the history of religions will readily agree that while truth is upheld in the spiritual core of a religious tradition as a divine virtue or divine value, in the actual establishment and propagation of that religion, it is not truth but falsehood that plays the most decisive role. Now, if you were to study the sum total of the teachings of Jesus Christ and all the dogmas and doctrines, the agendas, activities, animosities that churches, a large collection of churches across the centuries have propagated, you will see the point that I am trying to make. Well, the heavy reliance of falsehood or untruth becomes evident when religious interests are sought to be protected. Fortunately, we have a classic example, very well documented and handed down to us in the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. The keepers of Judaic religion decided to exterminate Jesus Christ in order to defend Judaism. He was accused of being a blasphemer. So when Jesus was tried before Caiaphas, the high priest, the chief defender of the Judaic faith, it's interesting to note that the chief priest took the help of false witnesses. That's a clear indication that when it comes to protecting religious interests, truth is a liability and the only refuge is falsehood. Now, if you examine the historical journey of Christianity, we know that at all stages falsehood has been used. And whether you like it or not, it's a fact that the experts in manufacturing falsehood in the interest of religion are priests. So if you examine all the priestly agendas in the past, including the Inquisition, including the Crusade, including all the sectarian wars, including all the religious animosities fomented from time to time, you would see that invariably the genius of the priestly class was the catalytic agent in all of this. And if people fought, it's because, and it has always been because, they were instigated to do so by their priestly class. That pattern hasn't changed to this day. But because the priestly class by themselves does not have the power, the means, the wherewithal to create large-scale troubles, they always work in collusion with the state power, the secular power. So we see the unholy alliance between religion and politics. And it was because the alliance had proved life-threatening, extremely unbearably malignant, that Europe, after suffering decades and decades of convulsions on account of sectarian wars, finally decided to put an end to it by enunciating the secular worldview, which insisted on a clear-cut, clear separation between church and state, between religion and politics. So, does religion help promote health in public life? Not at all. If religion could have done it, if people really believed that religion is a great asset in promoting harmony and good sense in public life, peace and stability in public life, an attitude of positivity and peaceful coexistence in public life, the secular worldview would not even have arisen. The emergence of the secular worldview in Europe is a clear historical evidence that when it comes to enabling or allowing people to live in harmony, live as brothers and sisters, live as members of the same divine family, if religion weren't such a headache, they would not have in the secular worldview. It's as simple as that. So this idea that religion is absolutely essential to foster ethical ideals, ethical values, the moral sense is absolutely baseless. It's a false propaganda. Now think of the idea of justice, another important value in public life. Think of a single instance, if you can, where the representatives of religion took any interest in ensuring that those outside of its fold got justice. Or take the extreme case. Think of a single instance in which the custodians of a religion made sure that those of the other camp also got justice. As a matter of fact, the sense of euphoria that a religious camp experiences in a tussle between a tussle with another religious bloc, competing religious enclave, is that maximum injustice was inflicted on one's enemies. You want a contemporary illustration of this? Well, think of the impasse between the Orthodox Church and the Jacobite Church. They are parts of the same mother church. They're two splinter groups. The Orthodox Church is a breakaway group from the Jacobite Church. And yet, ask any Orthodox person, ask any Jacobite believer in Kerala. Their ultimate fulfillment, their greatest euphoria, their greatest sense of fulfillment would be that they worsted each other. And in this, of course, the members of the Orthodox Church today are at a great advantage because they are armed and equipped with a Supreme Court order, which, in the strange ways by which justice is dispensed by human beings and courts presided over by human beings and guided by human law, gives to one church the right to appropriate, I would say misappropriate, the total buildings, landed assets, institutions, etc. of one group. So the church actually sanctifies the process by which one group eliminates the other. It is, to put it bluntly, the judicial genocide of a particular church. The judicial genocide, not literal, as individuals they exist, but the judicial genocide of the ecclesial existence of a people, and that would be the correct way of putting it, with the approval of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court comes to the conclusion that the 1010 or 11 congregations that belonged to the Jacobite Church should go to the Orthodox Church. And what about the Orthodox, the Jacobite believers? They should be on the streets. Such is man's capacity for justice. Now, the point I'm making is, what actually filled the members of the Orthodox Church in Kerala with absolute ecstasy is the fact that they have been able to push their brothers and sisters in another church, the sister church, the Jacobite church, onto the streets. That maximum injustice could be inflicted on them. Now, if this is not evidence enough to prove that religion is no help in promoting a sense of justice among its members, particularly when the vested interests of their particular church are involved, what other evidence can I provide? Think of compassion. When is it that you have seen a single instance in which an religiously ardent person showed compassion to one who is outside the pale or the ambit of his church's interests? Jesus highlights this issue so beautifully through the parable of the Good Samaritan. There's a man lying wounded and bleeding by the road. A priest comes that way. Then a Levite comes. Levite belongs to the tribe of Levi, or Levi, which is a priestly class. Neither of them experience the slightest touch of compassion. Why? Because of their religious baggage. And the Samaritan comes and has compassion on the man who needs help because he is free of the religious baggage. He lives in the world of realities. So look at it in any which way you want. The fact stares us in the face that if it is to inculcate a moral sense, if it is to strengthen your moral dignity and sense of responsibility, then it's not religion that helps you. In fact, what little goodness there is, what little human sensitivities there are in you could be entirely lost because of your religious zeal. And this is clearly evident when you look at the whole picture from the perspective of tolerance. Now, the opposite of tolerance is cruelty. Either you are tolerant or you practice cruelty. I don't have to argue extensively that the history of religions is also the history of cruelty. In the Indian context, for example, if you read Hindutva by Veer Savarkar, Vinod Damodar Savarkar, you'll get an epic description of how brutally Brahminical religion eliminated Buddhism from India, because Buddhism was accused of enfeebling, weakening the martial vigor of Hindus. It was completely, brutally eliminated from the land of its birth. And that turned out to be a historical gain, because insofar as Buddhism was persecuted in India, the land of its birth, it had to spread to neighboring countries, and therefore Buddhism spread all over. So, the idea, therefore, or conventional justification advanced in defense of religion, or the need to perpetuate our subjection to religion, is that without religion we cannot inculcate any moral sense in ourselves, in our children, and the generations to come. And it's thanks to religion that we are good human beings. Now, having said this, I also need to say that we need help to keep our humanity in good shape. We need help in order to refine our sentiments, bridle our desires, and to behave in a balanced, mature, mellowed, and responsible manner. We certainly need help, there's no question about it. Human nature has a tendency to go and grow wild. And life becomes a nightmare if human nature is not refined and made capable of collective behavior and harmonious coexistence. Now, for example, as Hobbes argued in the Leviathan, if people live in a state of nature, now living in a state of nature means living without the influence of, say, moral formation, the general sense of what is right and wrong, some idea about what the ideal situation should be, so on and so forth. Living in nature. Hobbes argues that life in nature is a life of constant struggle, when every man's hand would be at the throat of everyone else. It's an unbearable situation. So in order to mitigate the terrors of this life in nature, that according to Hobbes, people come together and create a social contract by which they surrender a part of their freedom, their licentious freedom, in order to create a context of security for all, so that people can live in peace and cooperation and maximize public good. So, it is necessary, it is certainly true that there has to be some influence upon us. But my contention is, and it's not my contention alone, this is amply borne out by facts, and many people before me have argued this. If a healthy influence is to be exerted on human nature so as to make it friendly to life, friendly to sane human existence on planet Earth, that help is to be sought or got not from religion, but from spirituality. It is spirituality, not religion, that's concerned with morals, values, and ideals. Well, you would say, well, is not spirituality the same as religion? I'm afraid not. Spirituality is that core of light from which all the fundamental values, the light of life itself emanates. Religions are formed because this light shines, and this light shone with particular intensity during certain periods in history, which attracted people who realized the worth, the irreducible need for this light. A community is formed. Unfortunately, that resulted in the formal organization of this light into some kind of a material and materialistic structure called religion, institutionalized religion. And as this process advanced, people moved away day by day, farther and farther away from the original source of light. As a result of which, religion, to the extent that it becomes a legalistic, formal, man-dominated system, becomes over a period of time a contradiction of the original light, which is paradoxically the source of its very existence. That spiritual light is, if you like, the mother of religion. But religion proves a rebellious, mother-killing offspring. That's reality. And if you read an author like Paul Tillich, he was a German, he fled Germany during the ascendancy of Hitler and the Nazi Party, sought asylum in America, and he distinguished himself as a great theologian. One of his contemporaries was Reinhold Niebuhr, and they were the two giants, the theological giants in the middle decades of the 20th century. Paul Tillich writes in detail about this, that when religion decays, religion becomes a contradiction of the original spiritual core from which it issued. So, now let's look at a contemporary fact. There is something called the Universal Happiness Index. Now, this is not a perfect tool, but it's an attempt to rate the countries of the world in terms of the happiness enjoyed by its subject of citizens. Subject is an improper word in democracy. Now, for better for worse, the countries that top the Human Happiness Index list are all countries that have discarded religion. I'm personally inclined to think that if there was a little less of religion in our midst, we would have lived more happily together. I'm reminded of an author whom I taught, whose works I taught as part of my work in St. Stephen's College, Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift, by the way, was a priest, and I had the opportunity to go and visit his mother church in Ireland, Dublin. And one of the statements, one of the quotations attributed to Jonathan Swift, I read there, which I still remember. Let me share that quotation with you. Jonathan Swift wrote, "We have just enough religion to hate each other, but we don't have enough religion to love each other." It's a simple but memorable quotation. Please remember this, learn it by heart. Easy to do. I read it only once in Dublin when I was walking. I walked past this, I saw the sentence, it had just remained etched in my memory ever since. We have enough religion to hate each other. We don't have enough religion to love each other. In other words, Swift, the priest, Jonathan Swift, the foremost satirist in English literature, if you like, the priest, realizes that religion is a catalyst for hatred. And so it is in the Indian context. One of my closest associates was, as many of my friends know, was Swami Agnivesh, a Hindu spiritual leader of great stature. I consider it my good fortune to have run into him accidentally in 1996 at a public meeting. We struck up a relationship, strangely, and that endured till Swamiji died 3 years ago. He was admitted to the hospital, he was awaiting liver surgery, but his health deteriorated. He was in hospital as an inpatient for a whole month, and he used to call me every day. And the very last phone call I received from him, he could barely speak. I could barely make out what he was saying. Gathering his breath, putting all his energy into it, this dying man told me, "Wilson, please tell the world that democracy in India will be wrecked on the rock of religion." If India is imagined as a ship sailing on the sea of life, religion will be that hidden rock on which it will crash. So, says Wilson, please tell the world that religion is the rock on which democracy will be wrecked in India. Well, these are the dying words of a man who dedicated his entire life to the cause of India, particularly to serving the poor of the land. His religion was social justice. And I use this occasion also to pay homage to a great friendship that also brought out the best in me, by the way. So I continue to cherish his memory. And Swami Agnivesh was also quite convinced, like Jesus was. And Jesus was his hidden inspiration, as he told me on many occasions. Swami Agnivesh was deeply convinced that the greatest need for humanity was a need to be liberated from the yoke of religion, but particularly from the state of subjection to the priestly class. And therefore, all of us understand why Jesus denounced the priestly class of his days. Unfortunately, they act as a source of corruption, not of refinement. They don't lead people to God, they lead people away from God. It's a reality, and the sooner we realize this, the better. But there is no gain in despising a class, the priestly class. It's nothing in itself. We must realize that there is a problem in our state of subjection to the priestly class in order to assume the responsibility ourselves for our own spiritual welfare. It is not God's will that a human being should remain dependent on and live parasitically on another, whether it is in the matter of physical nourishment, mental nourishment, or spiritual nourishment. We are given the ability, the opportunity, the resources, as well as the inner impulsion to seek our own nourishment. We do that in the context of our physical life, don't we? Do we derive our daily bread from churches? We do that in relation to our intellectual needs, or do we derive all our ideas, our insights from the churches? But when it comes to our spiritual nourishment, we think we have to be abject slaves on the church establishment, which is unnatural. No church can feed your spiritual hunger or assuage your spiritual thirst. And Jesus realized it. That's the reason why he said, seek and find. Just as you seek and find your daily bread, just as you seek and find your daily ration of ideas, if at all you do that, you have to also seek and find your spiritual food. And I thank God that this realization came to me before it became too late. I wish it had come earlier. Never mind. All it matters is that it came before it got too late. And that's the reason why I experience this keenness to share these insights and concerns with you. And I'm very grateful that there are so many of you who take these insights seriously, meditate on them in the light of your own experiences and your sense of the divine. Ultimately, my friends, human beings are of no help to us. Our refuge is God alone. In Him we have the unfailing ground of our existence. And as Paul says, quoting the classical authors of Greece, you find the statement of the 17th chapter of Acts of the Apostles, God in whom we live and move and have our being. That should be our guiding light. Not religion, not religion, not religion. God, God, God alone. Thank you.